a new home,
I
get
appreciate it.
settled in the thriving metropolis. Now you're in South Hillsborough County, right?
I guess you can call it that. I really don't know. I'm just out in Sun City.
Be
Whatever you want
careful
to
now.
call that.
If you down there now, you need to know where you need to know if you're in Riverview, Apollo Beach, Sun City,
Yeah.
Gibsonton, because that could impact things. You need to get your identifiers there. So you'll learn. You'll learn. You'll learn. So welcome to South County, and for those listening around the country, I know it's been a trying week for America. Tony, it's interesting, Professor. For me, I don't know that I feel much different this week than any other week
Well,
because
I
there's
feel
no.
different.
Here's what I would say. I believe America is showing us what America is.
Mm,
That's all I don't see nothing in this is not revolutionary, but a revelation
okay.
that there are certain things that are left in our community that are very harmful and hurtful that we have to endure. And when I say we, I mean African Americans. That America still struggles with this original sin, which was race, that it didn't resolve with the Civil War, and it's never really, in a total aspect, comes to grip with it. The fact that we still have institutionalized and cultural racial issues that demean people of color, uh, that doesn't surprise me. So, but what I would say is this: I look at this week as a great opportunity, though. Like today, a great opportunity for a conversation, a great opportunity to try to look at, okay, I got where we've been, here's where we are, but where do we go? But tell me how this week made you feel, some thoughts you had this week as we reflect on the death of George Floyd up in Minnesota.
Wow, it's so much. And I was just telling someone recently that it was this death that blew the gaskets for me. And I immediately didn't take me time at all to think back to the Philando Castile, to the Breonna Taylor, to the Eric Garner. It didn't take me hardly any time to see the difference in this. And people go, well, what's the difference? The difference to me was it was done in a way that shows one does not care for the life of the African American. I don't think it's out of fear that it happened. I think it's out of a lack of care for the life of an African American male in particular. Um, so that's it. Just changed my whole focus. And to be totally transparent, I was Thursday. This past Thursday, I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking about the show, but I'm thinking about the George Floyd situation. And I looked at my phone, got to a red light, looked at the phone, saw the video, and it just brought tears to my eye. It really bothered me because I can see him gasping for breath. I didn't have the
Yes.
audio on. I could see the stress on his face, and that bothered me more than any other. And I don't know if I'm becoming desensitized and why this one bothered me more than others. But yeah, there's no getting around this. And I don't know how we start to have this conversation in a way that changes. Now, you said nothing revolutionary or even revealing about this or revelation about this, but it has to be. That there has to be something different about this than any other. I
Yeah,
just think in the manner in which it's done.
watch it. The main thing I think here that people are struggling with is you're not being told about it. This is not Trayvon Martin, where somebody's telling you what happened.
Right.
You just can watch that video, and that's really the big change here. The absoluteness of the lack of compassion for the humanity of that human being suddenly now is in your face, and the extrapolation is that how so many other officers have felt when you've had people killed, uh by engaged with law enforcement officers. I tell you, for me, the hurtful moment is talking to my son,
Mm.
because it's kind of in his mind, it's my generation's issue now. He's 19 years old, he's starting to find himself and feeling a sense of responsibility for the world around him suddenly, as you may have done when you joined the military.
Right.
That you felt obligated. Hey, time I give back something, time I do something that impacts our community. That was a tough conversation, and I had to say, listen, you got to figure that out for you. I can't. I don't have any answers for you. Whether you turn your head and go in a corner and pretend like it doesn't happen, that's up to you. Or you pretend that it's somebody else's problem, or you try to be part of the solution. You have to make that call for you on your own terms, because you're the one that's got to live with that.
We
And
have
that was a tough conversation for me having with him. And I said, whatever you do, there are going to be consequences in all directions. No matter which one of those directions you take, there are going to be consequences.
yep.
And so that was a tough moment for me today, this week, and having that conversation, particularly because we just had the conversation about Ahmaud Arbery.
Yes,
We just
yes.
had that conversation, and he was, trying to, okay, explain to me how people think they can chase somebody down and shoot them. And I said, it's kind of like, when we find a frog on the patio. Do we put him in a cup and let him outside? Do you step on it? What do you do to it? Your sense of compassion and humanity dictates how you handle that.
Well, I
And in
won't tell
this,
you what I do to him, but okay. Could be
you don't
incriminating.
you don't get a firecracker and stick it in their mouth and explode them. I hope, man.
No, I'm too much of a wimp to do that.
So from that perspective, but let me ask you this though: what were your thoughts about the charges? So the officer has been charged with third-degree murder.
Right.
One, do you think they waited too late to charge him?
Yeah, certainly. They waited too late to charge him. Third degree murder, and I'm glad we're having this show, because in my research for this, I came across a technical definition, I think, for homicide. It's, bring about
Right.
a death
Wrongful,
in
yeah.
negligent ways. It's not necessarily criminal, but,
Correct.
always knew that term. The layperson have always associated that term with criminality.
Right.
So, third degree murder, I would like to stay with homicide, and I think they have third degree murder and manslaughter. So,
Yes.
while I think those charges fit in that context, because I don't know if you can get a capital murder charge out of it, and I think they're concerned. There should be some concern about overcharging him and allowing him an out that way. Now, I'm speaking in a domain in which I have no expertise. Now, I've had some run-ins, but I don't know anything about that part. So, yes, I think it was too late, and it really shows the pattern. I think you and I had a conversation, and you
Right.
felt that maybe this being amongst police officers may be something that comes about because of their lack of prosecution, not their lack of arrest, and not even prosecution, that they're actually being jailed behind it. I mean, they're often
Right. Yeah.
and that was the case in the Philando Castile.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our history is littered with cases of police officers killing an African American male under suspicious circumstances.
Now, let me interrupt you there. We have a caller, not a caller, and we have someone dialed into the Zoom. And I believe this is one of a former police officer and current attorney.
Okay.
Let's bring him
in.
All right, unmute him. Okay. Caller, who do we have on the line? Hello.
Tony?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, Julius. So you're on the show. You're on Straight Up the Middle. We have attorney Clinton Parrish.
Good morning.
And we're talking about some of the things as to, first of all, the question put on the table. Do you think it was they waited too late to arrest the officer? And what do you think about the charges that they filed against him?
Yeah. I think that the video was like very clear. And so, I don't know how long an investigation they needed to take to understand that, the man had, at the very least, he used excessive force, but more so that he committed a crime. And then, and as far as so I don't know why it took that long to arrest him. I don't know how long the investigation should have been. But, as far as the crime, in my mind, I'm a little in disagreement with third degree murder, but I do kind of get it because, and Clint, you could, chime in if you want, but I think that it might be a lot easier to succeed on a third degree, murder charge, manslaughter charge, as opposed to first degree. Although I think that you could make the case for first or second. That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the first degree is a stretch, and I think that it's just difficult prosecuting law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
I defended them when I was with the city attorney's office, and I'll tell you, man, we always felt good about any case involving law enforcement. Where citizens were involved, we throw them in that uniform, put their badges on them. We talk about all their great accomplishments and credentials and stuff, and have them walk through a non-emotional, rational approach to what they did. We always felt good with those cases. So when you go to prosecute an officer, you got to be sensitive. But let me ask you this though: what do you think about the length of time and its impact on the civil unrest? You think there's any correlation with that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think so. Because I mean, the bottom line of it is that we've seen this really too many times, and I mean, Mr. Arbery was just killed, not too long ago, and then we had Miss Taylor, and then there was other ones, and I think that people are just really getting sick of it. So, although like the civil unrest, I personally don't agree with it, and I don't condone it. At this point, I'm sorry to say, but I kind of understand the frustration. You know what I mean? And I think that if they would have, I mean, the video was very clear. At least it was clear to me. It's just ingrained in my mind of just, of that officer on his neck like that. I mean, there was, there's a belief, I think, that in the black community that nothing's going to be done. So when they don't arrest him, it gets people antsy. People are already kind of annoyed about everything that's been going on. So, people are going to respond in this way because they don't know what else to do, and they have to let that frustration out. So I don't condone it, but I get it. But I think that if they would have, looked at the video, looked at the clear facts that the whole world saw, and they just quickly made a move on that, I think that probably could have made a difference,
Now,
in my opinion.
let me ask you this, Joyce, because I know you're former law enforcement, right?
Correct.
So one of my issues, and I think I've shared it with Clint earlier, is I'm bothered that I haven't seen an outburst from African American police officers that are currently in uniform that, these outbursts haven't been posted online. I mean, just I wear this uniform and I'm tired of my people being killed. I mean, in the military, we had a way of policing our own ranks. So when things happen on the ship, I'm not going to say what ships, so no one knows. On ships, period. There's the upper level and lower level. You got a problem with me, I've done something. People said I've done something, I don't like it, we take it down to the lower level. Oh, you get hands placed on you on the lower level. Now, not all the time, but that was our way of handling things. And not that it didn't bubble up to the captain, but we're going to take care of things in a certain way. Now, that's certainly not what I'm saying, do anything of that nature. But I'm bothered that there's no outburst collectively. I've seen posts from different police officers, but it's the usual suspects. But not from fraternal orders that, may have that back and may have those officers, currently serving. So, where am I going?
Tony, I'm gonna say this. And it might be a little controversial, but what's going on now, I just feel like really being honest. You probably are not going to get that, in my opinion. And the reason why, because it's the police order, police culture. It's kind of uniform, across the country. And the funny thing about it is that it's so that they're so good at finding the right kind of individual, that would look to do this kind of work, police work. I found that it really doesn't matter whether they're white, black, Asian, whatever. It's something about this uniform way of thinking about, and it starts in the academy of when they get you in a frame of thinking that it's like a us versus them kind of mentality. And I'm sure that there might be black officers struggling with that, but the truth is that a lot of them most likely made their allegiance to this culture a long time ago. So it's going to be really difficult to come out and say, this is wrong. This needs to be stopped. You heard about the one female officer, I forget her name, but I think Attorney Crump took her case. She had got on Facebook and she really let police departments all over the nation have it. She has some choice words, and she ended up getting fired by the police department. She actually ended up suing the police department. I think Attorney Crump got involved. Right. Then there was a situation where I saw a guy. He got on Facebook. This is a white gentleman, white cop. He gets on Facebook and he gives a really thoughtful, and at least in my opinion, a very, very thoughtful opinion about this. All what's been going on in the with these killings and everything. And then his story was interesting. So after it ended up going viral, he goes back to his department. Initially, a lot of the administration at his department said, "Oh, I saw the video. Good video, good video." But then as the numbers of the views started going up and it started getting into like the millions, then his department said, "Okay, we need you to take that video down." But on principle, I take him as he really had some really good words about the situation. He said, "No, I'm not going to take it down because it's the truth and people need to hear it and this and this and that." And so then they fired him. And he was like a decorated officer, and prior military, excellent record, but they fired him because he wouldn't put the video down. And I saw the video. It was actually a good video. Everyone really did need to hear. He didn't say anything necessarily derogatory. He just spoke about the law and he lost his job. So if you break that, I guess what I'm saying is like when you break that line,
blue code. If you break that blue code, And I get that piece. That I understand that. Tony, you're very revealing what you said about in the military, because if you go back to A Few Good Men,
yes,
there is no way. There's no way. There's a conviction in that case of any sort, unless Jack Nicholson doesn't break down. If Jessup can hold he could have held it together and not. But everybody in that room understood that. Everybody knew that code reds existed.
Right.
The issue was, how dare you prosecute somebody for using it, as Colonel Jessup said, to save lives and strengthen a country. If you want me on that line, you need me on that line. Somewhere at cocktail parties where that's what he was saying. And I think these officers in their world say, listen, you all ask us to go do the dirtiest, nastiest work needed in this country so you can sleep at night.
Yes.
How dare you come now and question me in the way that I do it? The unfortunate thing is, that's the beauty of America, that we can, and the strength of our government is tied to our ability to hold our systems accountable, that nobody can be above. And this is a power issue. Exactly. I think if we can get juries to make it clear, you will be convicted if you kill someone in a questionable way like this, and it can be proven, I think it stops.
Well, okay.
So they'll be prosecuted.
Well, good point. So let me bring in this part before we go to break. I believe this.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Can I say something on that point? I think it also should make it very clear to people that we have to vote. A lot of the people that are making the decisions in these situations, may or not be people who share the black community sentiment. So we have to look at the local elections. People need to get out and vote because, the state attorneys, judges, judges can be appointed, but they're also elected. The people who are in these positions, a lot of times you vote them in, or you vote the people in who are going to appoint the people who are going to be making the power plays here. So I think that should be stated also.
And since this is a political show and you mentioned voting, let me just pivot to that because we did vote. Amy Klobuchar who
Oh
is
wow.
also vying for VP. So there's question about her when she was a county prosecutor in Minnesota. Um, so although we do have that right and that ability to vote, we vote the wrong people in.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, but even on the voting angle, this is about this is about power,
Right.
and in my mind, in the world, there's an absolute amount of power, and what we're talking about is how do we redistribute, how do we transfer it, how do we use it, power. Burning down a precinct is a reflection of power. Voting is a reflection of power. Spending money, it's a power connectivity. And I would love for our guests to espouse, okay, when people vote though, walk me to how does that impact in a situation like this? I vote, therefore, how does it impact something of this nature?
Well, okay. Like for example, I guess the most direct and simple example would be, okay, so some people that are kind of outraged about the third degree, the third degree murder charge, right? Well, who makes that decision whether it's going to be a third degree or first degree or whatever?
Right,
The prosecutor.
right.
And I don't know what it is, but oftentimes that prosecutor is elected.
Yes.
And I bet you when they were elected, I mean, all of the people who were looting, the people in the black community, if I don't know, but if I just had to guess, I would imagine they didn't vote for him. So, so when you're wondering, and I get it, third degree murder, but like if you're outraged by it, well, I mean, that you let the guy in that made that decision. So, things like that could probably be the most direct example.
Right.
But we see it all the time, everywhere. I
Hey,
mean,
listen, on that note, the prosecutor in Philadelphia, he ran on a platform. And his platform was elect me and I'll prosecute Bill Cosby. And he did.
And he did.
That was his platform, is the previous prosecutors have let Bill Cosby walk without holding him accountable. So if you elect me, I'll prosecute him. And that speaks to what our guest is indicating, is a way that this kind of plays itself out. I just think that we're still learning how power in America works, how our dollars work, and we got a new generation to teach that to. My son was saying to me,
that is very correct.
My son said to me, "Well, why do people protest? Why are they in the streets?" And I said, "It's a reflection of power." And he said, "Well, how?" I said, "Listen, if two people come in front of my building and demand that I drop a case, I don't think too much of it. But you put 15,000 people outside with torches and guns saying, 'We know where you live, drop that case,' we might be going out the back door of this building, getting out of here." I said, it's a reflection of power. And so we're coming to grips with that. We've tried to do it through the system. Now what happens though? What I love to hear our caller tell me, what do you expect will happen now in America with this situation with the protests?
Well, there'll have to be change, but I think you made a really good point when you said, what did you say? You said that people, it's a situation of power, but it's also, but it's also a situation because we're not educated on how power works. And I think that certain communities, like say the black community, we're just coming around to how it actually operates and how it actually works. And I think that voting is a big part of that, and so once that we kind of get around to like what that's about and how it actually works, how it coincides with media, imagery, money, business, it's all kind of intertwined in this thing we call power. And we're just like kind of behind the eight ball on it, but we're coming around. But I do think that, I just think that, if you want to have control of the situation, you got to know how the game is played, and you got to know the elements of the power, and voting is a big part of that. So, I mean, what I'm hoping is that this will, wake people up to know what they've got to do in terms of trying to attain the power through voting, through education. And then, and then I think once you get the right people in, you can have, you can have some sort of degree of change. If not, it'll just be, it'll be the same thing over and over.
Well, here's what I think about that. And using what Clint said, the example about, two people versus 1,500 people protesting. And I have on my Muhammad Ali shirt. I was trying to think, what am I going to wear today? I'm in this empty room, basically. But then I thought about, okay, well, I can tie this into Muhammad Ali because Muhammad Ali was willing, and we have some other examples. Some people, Kaepernick, but Muhammad Ali was willing to be stripped of his title. I mean, he was willing to put skin in the game. And I personally have to say, again, agreeing with Clint, it depends on what I'm up against. Do I go all in? Because, again, this blew the gaskets for me. And when we talk about power, like anything else, I mean, with power, comes effort, comes time invested, you have to be willing to lose something. Are we willing to do that collectively?
Well, you got to do it, but see, you got to do it the right way. See, I think it's good to protest, and I think protest, gets things done. But I think that protest it's not all. And I think it's also an example of just rage and you're not really knowing, really what to do because, there's some folks who understand that there's a system of power, but they don't feel attached to it. They don't feel any allegiance to it. So, businesses around, they don't feel any attachment to that, to the system as a whole. So, it doesn't really make, doesn't make any difference to them if it all falls apart. And right. So, you know what I mean? And so, what I think is, I think it's great to protest, but when you're talking about the issue of like trying to get power in America, I think it needs to be a more strategic
Absolutely.
method.
Yeah. You hit on a point that really, I think what made the civil rights movement over a long period successful and avoided another revolution in America.
They had a plan.
I think that, because my thoughts are this, when I was in college, I got involved in my first protest. And we wanted, had 5 things that we were demanding the school do. And we marched in the president's office and surrounded the building and made our demands and yelled and screamed. But the size of that crowd is what made them change what they were doing. The big thing is they could give us what we were asking. You have to demand something that the people you're demanding it to can actually give it to you. That really is my thought. You have to demand from, I can't demand of my neighbor that he stop, world pollution. Well, he can't do that. So we have to make sure we're demanding, you're protesting, that action needs to go along with some demands. I want to thank our caller for calling in this morning. Thank you, Professor, for setting that up. We got to take a break, everybody, and pay some bills. We're going to come back on the other side of this break and continue the conversation and really dive down a little bit more into how people are feeling though about this. The technical piece is one, and then see, well, how do you think this is going to affect our election in the fall? How does this play itself out? How is our president handling it? How is Joe Biden responding to this? So after this break, we're going to come back, jump into those issues and talk about it a little bit more. You listen to In Touch News, reality radio, where everybody could be a star. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
We're going to mute out.
Okay.
In Touch Radio, where you can listen to a cruising flow of smooth soul and jazz, today's R&B, and fun touching hip-hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
Giving you a buffet of music, news, and entertainment. We're In Touch Radio. In Touch Radio, the most loved station across the nation. In Touch Radio. Tell a friend. In Touch Radio.
Hello, Kubo. What have you got planned for today? Come on, this way.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
It's the most powerful magic there is.
Head outside to discover incredible animals.
Wow.
And beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure. So grab your loved ones and explore a world of possibilities. Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
My teacher said that we should have a plan in case of an emergency. Do we have one?
First thing I'm going to do is grab a flashlight with dead batteries.
I'm going to start randomly throwing clothes in the bag. You two will be hiding in the closet and Dad won't be able to find you.
And that's when we both start crying.
Uncontrollably. Can you pass the cutlets?
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency, who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Search Ready Kids at nyc.gov or call 311. Brought to you by the New York City Office of Emergency Management and the Ad Council.
Not really radio, it's communications. Because we're on the internet, and if you listen to us, you listen to the internet. It's a beautiful thing. This new technology. I just gotta believe that the future, what things look like after this virus, because of the way people are being used, we're using technology, is gonna be so different. Here on the show, we're continuing to use the Zoom application as a means of projecting our show. We just crossed a new threshold. We just had a caller come into the show through Zoom. Really easy to handle, manage, smooth platform, whole thing. So I just think that we're gonna be doing a lot more technology related stuff going forward. In Touch News tries to stay on the cutting edge. They don't stay stationary. They add new shows, new programming. So we ask that you all throughout the week that you listen to the station. InTouchNews.com, music, talk, community, health. The lineup of shows is just extraordinary. Daryl and Tammy Johnson did a great job with that. So I just ask that you support all the shows that are on In Touch News throughout the week. When you complain about things, you have to think of why don't things exist. When we complain about things, In Touch News exists. It is Black owned, it's Black controlled, and how about this, everybody? It's Black financed. Well, what does that mean? Hey, we need your support. Consider putting a commercial on the station. Consider supporting the activities that you hear about In Touch News doing. There's a wide range of opportunity for people, but when you want to complain about what we don't have, you have to think about why don't you have it. And one of the ways you can make sure this show exists and that In Touch News is here for anybody, for a flavor of communication that fits what you want, support it. There's also a print version of In Touch News that comes out, every monthly, quarterly. But again, support the paper, support this media, so that you can have the voices that we have in this show, and we can get the support and in our community that we all say that we say we want it. You say you want these things. Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Well, if you support the things that you do have, you want to worry about those things going away. So, all right, that's my soapbox spiel this morning. Let's dive back into this topic because it's so, Professor, this thing is so multi-layered in so many ways that it just really just takes your breath away.
Yes.
How do you feel this is impacting our political landscape at this point? And I speak to the national political landscape.
Right. And I don't think it's going to have much impact on I don't think it's going to have much impact on the national elections at this point. The only way I think it really factors in if Trump sends out a post, one of those crazy tweets, and just turns it upside down. He's contacted the family. He's done the bare minimum. I had a comment come to me the other day. Well, I heard Trump contacted the family. That just doesn't seem genuine. And, it may not have been, who knows? But he did. And he's not the only president that's contacted a family that's suffered such a egregious loss. So I don't think it's going to have an immediate impact, at least not on Trump. I think now Joe Biden has to be careful how he responds to it, because Joe Biden's also authored some really tough legislation back in the 90s or whatever it was. So he needs to make sure whatever he says or however he approaches it, that it doesn't seem like he's just saying it to say it. Me as a Republican, sure, I can poke at the things that Joe's done back then and say, look, he didn't care about African Americans. I don't think that's the case. They were legislation, just like Hillary Clinton and the super predator comment. It was legislation done at a time when certain crime, it was at its pinnacle. So, all those things are in place for a reason, and they wanted to come across as the person to handle it. If you're considering Amy Klobuchar, I think you have to be even more careful. I have to address mine. Again, Joe Biden is the one I think has more to navigate here. So Joe and Amy as a combo, if that were to be the direction he chooses to go, that's certainly a minefield that he has to navigate. And then to that degree, before I turn it back over, it's going to be, Kamala Harris. She also had some questions about how she handled some things, and she was state attorney. And then I think the third, I don't know if it's a distant third pick or not pick, but a prospect for VP, Val Demings out of here, Orlando. She also has a law enforcement background that I think would all take some type of careful planning, and however you pitch that and put that forward, because these are those times. If they don't convict this guy, this is how it goes. Trump, I think it favors Trump. If they do not convict this guy, if it goes the way that the other officers have gone in the past, again, Philando Castile, and do you know that was only 8 miles apart?
Wow. Yeah, I think that's why you got so much violence in Minnesota.
Yeah.
They just felt this.
Exactly.
And they just felt. Here are my thoughts. I don't think people really care what Joe did. From a, if you take the idea that at the time, well, let me say this about Joe. I think people trust that whatever he did it from the right place in his heart. Okay. That I think he's gonna get a pass to do that. So if you take that and it comes out later that it's manipulated and it doesn't benefit the community that the level that you want, I don't know that people are gonna hold him and not support him because it didn't come out that way, because they're gonna feel that his heart was in the right place. That's, I think, the battle for Donald Trump right now. His biggest issue, I think, Professor, is people don't trust his heart. And so because they don't trust his heart to be in the right place, they're always suspicious of his actions. That, I think, is the thing that's going to affect this, is if Joe can strike a compassionate tone that doesn't come off as weak on law and order, but it's compassionate. I think that's going to be the struggle for Donald Trump, is he just doesn't do compassion and thought feelings well. And right now, man, somebody's got to heal this country. Who on a national level leads us through this? And if he defaults to letting Joe and the African-American surrogates that he has do it, well, I don't know how Donald Trump benefits at all from this.
Well, that's how you look at it. So let me put this in the mix. Under the Obama-Biden administration, let's not forget, we had Eric Garner, we had Mike Brown, and we had Philando Castile. All those were under there.
Yeah.
Why is America hurting and Minnesota feeling it so much? Like we just said, it's 8 miles apart, and here it is.
Oh, Professor, you can't listen. I just hung that bait out there. I just got it in the water. I didn't even get to chum it out, man. Let me chum it out first. Come on, let me chum. You know you're gonna. No, you did. You fall for. Listen, okay, banana in the tailpipe. Here we go. So you can't expect to undo 400 years of institutionalized oppression and racism in a mere 8 years. Now, what Obama did is, let me say, here's what Obama did though. Mm-hmm. He beefed up the Civil Rights Division. He made it an initiative inside the DOJ. Go find these cases. Go after, make it clear, that you're going to evaluate police departments. You're going to look at what they're doing. You're going to put them under some kind of an agreement to address these issues. Donald Trump comes in, dismantles all this stuff. And, instead of saying there are good guys on both sides, he comes out and calls the people in Minnesota thugs. That's really, I think, the struggle here is you don't have a federal government apparatus to now go in and do the work you need to do on the ground level so that other police departments now get their act together. I think I heard one police chief come on who said what he did is He had his entire department sit down and watch that video and go through all the things that are so wrong with that. Now, that's a reflection of a leadership down level of we don't tolerate this. We're going to battle this as a cultural, institutionalized issue. Donald Trump has made it such that you don't have departments, concerned. He jumps in the middle of cases and tells people they're innocent. I can't believe people are being prosecuted for that stuff. And he undermines the law, the order that these departments have. So I think from that perspective, I won't blame Obama's administration now, because you're right. They can't undo that. They've got to follow the rules. And in this case, Donald Trump's Justice Department, they got to follow the rules too.
We have, I don't know, this may be Julius calling back in. He wanted, or maybe, let's see.
Okay, let's see who we got.
All right, straight up the middle. Caller, who do we have?
This is Councilman Orlando Gooch calling in.
Oh, wow.
Man, listen, I hate Slater. Listen, no, let me say it like it is. This is City of Tampa Councilman Orlando Gooch. Good morning, Councilman Gooch. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Brother Parrish. Good morning.
Listen, let me tell you something. Now, okay, so tell the truth. Are you happy that you're a retired officer and don't have to go put on your battle gear and stay and get in line and face these angry people out there?
The day that they said it was my final day and I got to go in and turn my stuff in, you can see my chin was grinning ear to ear. I was like, I'll see you around.
But listen, though, I think you're in a tougher spot now. Because at least back then you had a gun, a badge, a shield, a stick, a taser. You had some weaponry. Now, brother, you got to get out. These streets are calling. Talk to me about what's happening from a government level. What things are you all thinking about to try to make sure Tampa doesn't become Minnesota?
Well, I've called the mayor, the chief, and those other black elected officials in Hillsborough County and Tampa, and also our neighborhood enhancement people, making sure that we're prepared, making sure that the community is engaged and understanding that we just can't be a place that has self-destruction, especially my district. My district is a very, very large district. We cater to everybody. And in most of my urban core district, we just can't have destruction like that because we just couldn't recover. We're having difficulties now, especially with budgetary restraints with the COVID-19. Destruction, that just can't be.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Law enforcement wise, you saw what happened. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about how do the other three officers watch that happen? Give us some insight on the law enforcement officer angle on this.
Well, a person who's worked in the hood, person who's worked in all neighborhoods, I just think it's appalling. My biggest concern is that when I see the Asian officer looking at the crowd, and the crowd is saying, this guy is bleeding from the nose and mouth, and the officer never turns to see what his counterpart is doing. As an officer, you got to be engaged in your whole surroundings and to never look. And then all of a sudden, you take 2-3 steps back to the curb, and you still never even look at the victim. When the crowd is pointing, he's bleeding, and your job is to protect our life. So if your partner was doing something ill will, you should have had the know-how of your surroundings to see what the hell is going on. And I'm just appalled about that.
Let me jump in there. A couple of things. I watched that video so many times. And good morning, City Councilman.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. When I watched it, supposedly the Asian police officer is his brother-in-law. I don't know how true that is, but supposedly that's the case. I did look back. So not only was there, blood coming from his nose, do you see the position where he was? He was face down near the back tire of the police car. I can see the officer's license plate clearly. So, I mean, you're just almost pinned by the back tire. You have a knee in your neck. And what I did look at the Asian police officer, and I saw his hands flinch because I saw him look at the crowd, only glance at his partner, and I saw his hands flinch. It almost seemed like he was nervous and like, hurry and get this done but still, you're right, didn't do anything. And that's just the issue. And Clint made mention of something that I want you to respond to as well. He made mention before you got on. With the Rodney King riots, I was looking at that, obviously preparing for the show, and they put in place what they call Christopher Warren. I think he might have been the DA, but they called it the Christopher Commission, where they reevaluated how they responded, police officers would respond to those type of deadly situations. We also had the Philando Castile case in 2016. Why is it still? Why does the police department, police officers, why do they always need retraining on the basics of how to respond to deadly situations? How many times does a deadly situation present itself before we know we don't shoot them in the chest first? We don't shoot 5 shots into the car first. I mean, I think it's an out to say that we need more training. I think it's bad.
No, you don't. No, you don't. It's not about training. Listen. When you're trained as a police officer, you're not trained to shoot and wound. They don't teach you that. It's not, why didn't you shoot them in the leg and all? No. You're trained to stop the threat, period. To stop the threat. That's number one. As you rate the training, you know when you're hurting someone. You know when someone's hurting you.
Exactly.
So I don't look at the excuse. When I first ran for office, I was in a debate. And a young lady talked about her son and how the police did this and that and gave us an area. I said, well, the problem you have in the country is that you have white officers who've lived in areas where there are no black people, or they have not interacted with black people. So if you've never been taught or interacted with black people, you don't know the culture. Or Hispanic people, you don't know the lingo. Hispanic people talk very loudly. They talk with their hands. It's not a threatening gesture. That's their culture. Whereas me as a black man, as a boy, I've been taught how I talk around white folks, how I should dress, how I should act. Like I'm performing for a job before I even become an adult. So I don't get myself in type of situations. But the mere factor you have to look at is fear. When you see white folks, especially police officers who've never been around black folks, in their daily life, they're still not around black folks. So they don't go around them because sometimes it's fear factor. So when you put on a uniform, and now you've have an authoritative figure now. So now how dare you talk to me? I'm the policeman. So you have to look at the whole dynamics, and that's why we talk implied risk training and cultural diversity. You have to be able to have officers understand the realization of working in a black community. If I worked in an exclusive white community and they threw me in the hood as my first assignment the first day, how do I react to that? I don't understand the culture. I've been taught that's a bad with that.
Right. So tell me then, and I get that. So how because externally it's really difficult, to really impact that change. How does that change occur on the inside with law enforcement agencies? That's really where I believe it's got to happen.
Well, I think you got to have administrations who truly believe in that, and that's what now you talk about your training has to be in, where you get those officers while they're in the training program, and now you get them involved in communities first before they even put a gun to their hip. That now they're going out into the community and interacting with the people that they may serve one day. I would never, when I was a training officer, a new guy would ride with me. We didn't go way over to the fairest places to eat food. We ate right in that black community. They learned what collard greens were. They learned about what neck bones were. You see what I'm saying? They learned a different culture. And then that makes them a better officer when dealing with situations in communities. And that's what you got to have. You got to have that training up front with culture and understanding and putting them in situations in those areas to understand why people talk this way or why they do what they do or what the culture frame is.
Brother Goose, I know that you've been engaged, like I said, heavily in our community, from the law enforcement to the volunteer with youth sports leagues, and now as a city councilman, you're doing a spectacular job here in our local community. For somebody in another community, what would you say to them they can do to help impact their political situation or structure such that maybe they can get the change they need in their community? You're giving advice to somebody somewhere else who might be listening to the show. You would say, here's how you might be able to help your community avoid having a similar situation. What advice would you give?
You got to have good young leaders as well as your elders to be engaged in the community, to know the people in the community, to be able to go and talk with them. You got to make sure your elected officials are engaged with the people in the community. And you have to make sure your police agency and your elected mayor or county commissioners, they understand culture as well. You know, when I'm on the dais all the time trying to get legislation passed, I always give up scenarios or I give experiences to make them believe that they've been in those shoes and they're able to influence them to get what I need for what I'm trying to fight for in these communities. So I just think you have to be engaged in the people and know the communities to understand the communities.
Well, thank you very much, City Councilman. We appreciate you calling in this morning. I know you're very busy. And listen, man, it means a lot that you stop.
In Tampa, we're right now doing a black.
So thank you very much for calling in. That's City Councilman Orlando Goose,
Thank you.
of Tampa. We really need you. So thank you very much again, Councilman. Hey, Professor, so I don't think it would be fair to the people out there listening if we didn't touch on one other subject.
What's that?
That is the showdown between Donald Trump and Twitter.
Yes.
He is, if nobody else could make coronavirus fall off the front page, Donald Trump has done it.
You know,
what did you make of that?
The only other person that could give coronavirus a bigger name is Cardi B. You know, that little hook that you have going. But I actually like what he did, and I think there are more people. There's probably bipartisan support for what he did. Both sides suffer. Now, he did it because of him. They fact-checked him. They took sides opposing him, and he has that pen and paper. So I believe I like what he did. I don't like. Well, what comes out of that is it's going to be scary. I'm not sure it will pass in legislation because I don't know what legislation you can pass on a social media platform that's binding anyway. But anyway, the short answer is I like what he did. I like how he is. He's the first president to use that. Now he's probably, we had Twitter with GW. He's the first president to use that platform so effectively to just go around the media.
Right. So I went back and looked at something, and most people don't realize this, but John Kennedy was the first person that really used TV, that really, really used it. Mm-hmm. You know, he was good looking, charismatic. He understood the moment. And, you know, and I compare Donald Trump's use of Twitter as moving us into a new era. It's kind of like the first president used the airplane to campaign and get around as opposed to riding around on a train. We have those moments. I just think it's interesting watching the what is the line, because he always seems like he's playing to a crowd. This seems like he's playing to strangely a conviction though, and I don't know if he has any. You know, that's what's kind of weird to me. It's like he has a conviction about this issue related to what gets to be said on Twitter and not. Now, my thoughts are it's a private enterprise. I don't like the idea of government's hand. You know, it's kind of saying what you gotta, you know, do and don't do.
Right.
You know, that's what. And what are your thoughts about that? You don't, as a Republican, find issue with less. You don't want less regulation as opposed to more regulation.
Right. So Republicans do believe in less legislation, governmental legislation. In this case, it has merit because Twitter, Facebook, and their back end is always going to be the data component. So your Google's out there where data never dies. You need something that's going to balance that conversation because we know that there are more. Let's look at it from how Trump may be looking at it. There are more Democrats than Republicans. The liberal media always wants to either fact check him, you know, till the cows come home, or they shadow ban him. So he doesn't think his message is getting out there. But there are a lot of other people, private citizens, who have that same concern. We just don't hear about it on the bigger stage because Trump has a megaphone.
But so what? You don't have a right to get your message out.
Nor do you have a right to stop it.
If you're using my platform, yeah. You don't get to stand on my porch and say what you want to say if I don't want you to. Get off my porch. And that's their porch.
That all goes into, so if your agreement, if the contract between you and I said, well, you can't say certain things, and I obviously don't agree with that, or I say it anyway, then you have a right to block what I say. But if your platform just says data usage, blah, 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 you can't. It's not your right to check what I say. Then there's
watch this. I'm gonna go. Watch this. Isn't that my free speech right too? To say what I want to say about what you say. He said what he wanted to say, and they said it's a lie. Don't they have the same free speech right?
Well, they have the same speech right, but then they can't. What they did was remove it, and they shadow banned him. So you can't have all of those tools. You can't say
no. They just put a banner saying another lie. I mean, something along those.
According to me, this is another lie, right?
So listen, I think that's going to have a lot more legs going forward. I see that the hour has come for us to get out of here. Give me your closing comments that you would like for people to take away as they go into next week.
Man, you got me. I was texting, call in. Going into next week. Hey, look, I'm willing to put some skin in this game. So if there's anybody listening that has, and I'm not getting out here throwing rocks, but I'm willing to march arm in arm with you. So I'm the professor. Contact us via the show, and I'm with you.
Okay, sounds good. Listen, I appreciate everybody who tuned in this morning. There's a listener I know in Virginia who sent me several text messages trying to get on the show. Hold those comments. I'm going to schedule you next week and make sure you have an opportunity to get on this station and say what is on your mind about the things that are happening in our community. We appreciate all the listeners, all the viewers. Stay engaged in your community. Make it the kind of community that you love and that you're proud of. And we appreciate you joining us this morning. You've been listening to In-Text News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. Have a great day.
All right,
good job, Tony, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.